But anyway, the food was really good. And I hadn't had pho like that in a really long time. And this man said something to me about how he knew of a good place to get. I don't remember why we picked that restaurant or how that came up, but he invited me to eat with him. And I said okay. And then he drove us to the, I had my cell phone on me, so I thought, I don't know that I did use his cell phone. I think I was asking for directions, because I just asked him for that, and I had my own cell phone. I thought I could just dial 911, maybe, if there's a problem. And we ended up at this, or maybe I didn't even have any minutes left. I can't remember. But we ended up at this Vietnamese restaurant, and I had such a weird feeling when once we were there. She served us the pho, and then I started feeling really nervous about something, and I felt like I shouldn't eat. I don't know why, but he wasn't, he started eating his soup, but he was really watching me very intensely. And I had this feeling that I shouldn't eat the soup. And I only had I had one sip of broth from the spoon. And then I noticed this expression change on his face. Like, almost, this sounds really weird, but it looked like evil. Like he was really kind of like this evil look of glee that I was eating this soup. And when I saw this weird look come over his face, that he was so happy, that first he looked really nervous. He kept wiping his hands and he looked very guilty and nervous. And then when I had a sip of the soup, he looked relieved and kind of evil and happy that I was eating this soup. And I suddenly thought, oh my gosh, what if this soup is poisoned? And just based on his expression and the way he was acting, and there were all these other people in that restaurant who were staring at me. There was a group of Americans too that watched me walk in. They were not Asian. And they were off in the corner and they were waiting. They were there before we were. And they were sitting off to the side watching me eat the soup. And as soon as I had a sip, they all smiled at each other and then they got up and they left the restaurant. So between his look of kind of evil when I was eating the soup and this weird reaction and observation by some white people at a table in the restaurant before they left, I got a really bad feeling about it. I started wondering what was in the soup. So then I remember I said, I took another sip, and I said, I'm just really not feeling that hungry because I already had something at McDonald's. And then he started to look nervous again. And then I said, where's the restroom? And I had to use the restroom, so I left my bowl of soup there, and I stood up and went to the back. And as soon as I went around the corner, I remember the cooks were all staring at me too. Like one of the cooks had this evil look. Like they were waiting for something bad to happen. And I went to the restroom, and as soon as I went around the corner, there were these Virgin Mary posters all over the walls. It was like it was like a Virgin Mary shrine, and I couldn't believe it because I was like, this is like a Vietnamese. I thought this was just some sort of, Asian religion Vietnamese place. And it was all Catholic. It was Catholic Mother Mary stuff everywhere. I mean, like, I didn't even see anything of Jesus. There wasn't even Jesus anywhere. It was like a Mary shrine when you turned a corner. And I, went to the bathroom. I just thought, oh, that's so strange. Because, I mean, it didn't really bother me, except that it surprised me. So I never forgot it because I thought, that's really unusual for an Asian restaurant. And then it's so much of this Mary stuff everywhere. And I went to the bathroom. And and then I came out. And when I left the bathroom and looked around, he was gone. I mean, he had split. And I looked over at the woman, the cook, and I said, where did this man just go? Did he just leave? And she said, yes, he had. And I asked her, I said, can you wrap this up for me to go? Or put it in a to-go thing. So then she looked nervous and guilty, and then all of a sudden, and there was this man walking by the restaurant looking in while I was eating there. There were different people who were very interested in my having a bowl of soup at that place. And then I went outside, and I thought that he had taken off, and he was smoking, and he looked extremely nervous, like he was about ready to... Actually, he was almost ready to leave. I caught him before he left in his car. And I said, hey. And I said, why did you just leave? And then he came out and he started smoking a cigarette, and he acted extremely nervous. He was shaking and acting nervous, and he said, I don't know. And when they saw me with this takeout bowl of soup, everyone was very, very nervous about it, I think. And then I decided to throw it out. I didn't know that I was going to have anything happen to me later. And when I decided to throw it out, then all of a sudden, all of these guilty, extremely nervous and scared expressions changed to looks of absolute relief. And so then again, I was wondering, how come the cook looks so relieved that I just threw that out? And all that I'd had was 2 sips of the soup. Like 2 sips of the broth. 2 spoonfuls of the broth. And so then he drove me back to, then he had to pick somebody up, and there was a big crucifix, Catholic type thing, hanging from the rearview mirror. And I believe that, and it was his sister, someone, a cousin. And then they dropped me back off downtown, and then I looked for work again. Even though I was in Tacoma, I was like, I have to find something besides Wenatchee. So when I was in Tacoma, for the short time that I was there, I went to all of the restaurants along the water, every single one of them, and I gave them my name and number and a resume when I had, as I had one, and filled out applications. I went door to door, filled out applications, met managers. I sang with a jazz group at one point. That was before I met this guy and got poisoned. I think I got poisoned. It was basically between that incident and between something I ate that was from some Australians at a hostel later. And anyway, so I had tried looking for work even there. And I talked to somebody about, called a Mormon couple, about talking to somebody from a pastor from a Mormon church, and they said go in person, but I wasn't able to go anywhere at that time. I later ended up going somewhere in Seattle, meeting with somebody there, but I probably should have met with someone over in the Tacoma area. And I then got on a bus. I think that I asked my parents or my brother for help with a bus ticket just to get back, because I didn't have, CPS had told me to go there, and I did not have any money. I had like maybe a few bucks, like I said, to buy something to eat at McDonald's, and that was it. I didn't have enough money for a bus ticket to go back to, and actually that's right, because I only had enough for a one-way, and that was part of the reason I didn't go all the way back. I think I had enough for one way, and then maybe to get into Tacoma. I think that actually the bus driver let me get on for free, if I remember correctly. Like, I had a ticket that went one way all the way there to Vancouver, and then once I was in Vancouver, I think I talked to the bus driver and told him about my situation, and I didn't have money to get back, so then he took me, I think that it was for free, I think that he took me from there to, I told him I was in a dangerous situation, which was true, and then I think he took me from there to Tacoma, and then once I was in Tacoma, I tried looking for work, I couldn't find anything. I stayed with my brother in Olympia for one day, and then when I was dropped off, I had to ask my parents for a bus ticket to get back to Wenatchee. And it stopped in Seattle. So I went to Seattle because that's where all of the Greyhound buses go. You have to stop there first. And when I was in Seattle, I then had been told, I had already been told that I needed to make a restraining order or report in the Seattle area. And the FBI, when I specifically had tried to contact the Seattle FBI from Wenatchee about these judges supposedly that wanted to kill me, and the FBI told me that they weren't going to take any report from me. And then I was told by a woman named Mary. And then I was told if anybody was going to take any kind of report later after I complained about that, that I had to go in person. And they wanted me there in Seattle in person. And basically, once I was in Seattle, I was assaulted. And I lost my singing voice. And the FBI didn't even allow me to make a report. They pushed me out of their offices, blocked me from their doors. So I went to I stayed in Seattle. I possibly asked my parents for a tiny bit of money for a hotel in case I needed, I think it was just mainly bus money though, and maybe I used some of it for a hostel when I was over there. I'm trying to remember. Because I was then at the courthouse, and I did file a petition for a restraining order when I was there.